Welcome to Storyboards. I'm Zach.
I'm Jameson.
And it not be National Talk Like a Pirate Day.
No.
I just be talking like a pirate.
We just heard some creaking and thought we were on a boat.
That's what happens. Every time I hear creaking, whether it's people walking upstairs, whether they're going downstairs, opening a door, I'm on a boat, just like the Old Spice Man.
Just like the Old Spice Man. I'm on a horse.
Backwards.
With kittens.
Look at me. The kittens are now pearls.
Oh, those poor kittens.
They're worth more now. Maybe not sentimentally, but they're worth more now.
Yeah, I guess.
Hey, here we are, episode 2.
Episode 2?
Yeah, the Clone Wars, right?
No, this isn't the Clone Wars. I'm sorry.
That's like 2.5, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
No,
I don't think we'll do an episode 2.5.
No, but today we're talking about a special story.
We are?
Yes, it is a very special story. It's going to be different than the one we discussed last week because we're changing between Eternity Found and this new one that we'll be talking about today.
So this one is a story about a young man born in the desert underneath 2 separate sons, whose parents are dead, and has he lives with his uncle and aunt.
Yeah.
And there's this old dude in the desert. His name is Bin.
Bin?
Yeah, old Bin.
Bin Shinobi?
Yeah, Bin Shinobi.
Man, this is so original it hurts.
Right? And there's something that's like he can tap into these weird powers called the Schmorts.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's not like the Schwartz at all, because that's copyright.
Yeah, that's copyrighted. We're doing the Schmorts. Schmorts and Bin Shinobi. No, we're not talking about any of that. We're talking about a book called The Castaways.
Ooh, The Castaways.
Yes.
Tell me more.
Tell me more, tell me more.
I've been cast out very far.
I don't know either. So, The Castaways is completely different in feel than Eternity Found. Eternity Found is like a space opera that's like super epic. Castaways has a lot of humor in it. At least in the first little bit. It's pretty fun. But go with me now. Go with us as we take you back to the distant year 1910.
1910.
In a world. In 1910.
1910.
In Southampton, England.
What was it like back in 1910?
1910, back, what I remember from 1910, because yes, I'm that old.
Dang.
Yeah, right, though? The Model T Ford was coming out in the 1910s or 20s, one of the two. So lots of horses and carriages, lots of big poofy skirts and massive hats, lots of gentlemen in suits walking everywhere regardless of the weather, lots of one of those newsy caps walking around. This was just after the Industrial Revolution, so the world is better-ish.
It's a world where everything is starting to build. Everything is starting to raise higher than it's been before.
Stocks are at their highest, about to go to their lowest.
Well, yeah, I mean...
We're not talking about that.
I mean, with great building and great manufacturing and
comes great responsibility.
Yes, and great industrialization, it means the streets become rougher.
Yep. So we're still in a lot of dirt roads. Mm-hmm. We are, I always imagine, people always say that when they look at old photographs and they're black and white or they're sepia, Sepia. Wow, I can speak sepia.
Sepia.
That is how, that's the only colors that existed in that world back then.
Of course. They didn't have colors until color television.
Yep. I mean, that didn't happen. In this world, however, this world I imagine completely in sepia. Those are the only colors. Brown and more brown. There's so much dust in the air.
Can you guess his last name? Zachary Brown.
Not the band.
Oh.
Not the band. Please, not the band.
Zachary Brown.
So that is the only reason that I imagine it in sepia is because my last name.
Yep,
Not because it fits the feel of this world or anything.
Only reason.
So, one of the important things that does happen around this time in the 1910s, I think it's 1918. Don't quote me on that date, but the Titanic happened.
Ooh.
So that's sort of fun. Maybe that'll come into this later. Maybe. Probably not.
Yeah,
it's not important.
Nope, not important at all. Not to history, not to anybody.
No, definitely not to this story. So that's where we're going to start out this story. I wanted to write this in a way that that sort of makes the real world Earth seem a little silly. Not quite grounded, because we're not going to spend a lot of time in Earth. We're going to spend it on Neptune.
Yep, Neptune.
Now,
you're probably sitting there wondering, didn't he say that this isn't a space-bound adventure?
It's not a space adventure, okay? So, why Neptune? Well, Neptune is the Roman god of the sea, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Neptune's far, far away, right?
Yes.
We've only observed it through a telescope, right?
I assume, yeah.
As far as I know, the farthest we've gotten is Saturn.
Ah.
If you haven't looked at those close-up images of Saturn,
they
are
awesome.
so cool. Look them up. So, as far as we know, Neptune could be flat, right? And it could give the appearance of being an orb because there's a lot of water mist coming off of it, right? Yeah.
Earth's not flat, just Neptune.
Yeah, just Neptune. So all you flat earthers out there, you should be flat Neptuners.
You should tune your senses to Neptune.
Neptune has a good reason for being the place that we are going to be. Because there is a world irrevocably connected to ours.
Dun, dun, dun.
It's Neptune.
Neptune?
A world that used to have thriving cities, low valleys, high mountains, and a beauty ours only dreamed of. Now, long ago, there was this people that lived on this world, and they were like, hey, we have this entity that's the land. It's pretty cool. It's got a lot of power. Then there's the air, and it's pretty cool. It's got a lot of power. But that was it. There was only land and air.
These people were very religious. These people, they connected a lot with these great beings. They were very Roman in influence.
And in society. Buildings, everything. Spoilers, it's Atlantis.
What?
Yeah, right? All of Neptune is Atlantis.
Atlantis is in space.
Space Atlantis.
Space
we get it, but you're from space.
We get it, you're from space.
So there was a group of these people. They called themselves the Order of Perfection.
Ooh.
Yeah, they were pretty prideful people.
I'd assume.
Yeah, I mean, with a name like that, come on.
With a name like this, who needs
anemones?
Anemones. Neptune. Yeah.
Neptune. So the Order of Perfection, they were just like, you know what? I don't care for the air. He's a dumb god. I don't care for the land. He's a dumb god. You know what? We're going to get together. You, me, about 20 others. Let's come up with something better.
Uh-oh. They're creating their own god.
Yeah. So, after years and years of research and study, these guys decide to go to their temple. And they lay down on the altars in this temple. They take knives, and they plunge it into their gut, right over above the sternum, and drag it down all the way through their stomach until their intestines pop out. And they cut open their intestines, and lo and behold, something comes forth from them.
Aye. Obviously.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd just assume something would come if you cut yourself open.
Yeah, I mean, it's their undigested dinner.
Oh, yeah. Pie. Just a full pie.
A full pie just evaporates from nowhere. No. Water.
Water?
Water starts gushing forth from their intestines and does not stop.
Ew.
Yeah, it's pretty nasty. It introduces water into this world, and, I mean, this floods pretty much all of Neptune. All of Atlantis is now completely underwater. Hey, wow, that sounds like Greek mythology. Wow, I'm not influenced by that at all. All of it is completely underwater, and it introduced water into this world. But what happened to those people? I mean, are they dead?
Yeah, right? They'd all be sunken underwater, right?
Well, yeah, they're sunken underwater, but they turned into like this massive kraken beast.
Oh.
Yeah.
Like the Kraken?
Yeah. Well, pretty much. Except for it's like horses. Sort of odd. They turned into a being called the Perfection.
Ooh.
Now, the Perfection manifests differently in our world and Neptune, which we're going to talk about the connection between our world and Neptune in just a little bit. But in Neptune, on Atlantis, what we will be calling it in this book is Atlantis, or the world of the Castaways. It manifests as a massive beast that's sort of a Hydra-esque shape. So it's got a center body. And then it's got 20 or so different massive, long, eel-like heads, like necks, that go into horse heads.
Ooh.
The horses have sea foam that constantly billows from their mouths, and they can open their mouths to spew forth lots of different sea creatures.
Ugh.
Yeah, they're not very, very nice.
Free lobster.
Free lobster. Pick one. They're fresh. And then in our world, on Earth, they manifest completely in a water form. So I like to imagine it as the Lord of the Rings scene when that's only in the movies, if I remember correctly.
I believe so.
I think so. When black-haired elf lady whose name is Aragorn's lover, Éowyn, who's like hundreds of years older than him.
Well, technically in the books, it did happen, but it wasn't Éowyn. It was her chosen.
That's true. Well, the water river thing that has all the horses. Yeah, I sort of imagine it like that, only a lot more menacing. Yeah.
Less hooves.
Yeah, because it's water. There are literally no hooves. So that's how it manifests there. But the Perfection, the Order of Perfection, when they released water into this world, they also released a different entity. This entity is known as the Deep.
The Deep.
The Deep.
Now, when I first heard about the Deep, I imagined if you go down into the dark depths of the sea, and that crystalline blue of the color gets darker and darker and darker until you can't really see through it anymore.
Yeah, that is exactly what the Deep is like. It is the darkest of the dark of the ocean, but sentient and has power. And may or may not want to flood everything. Yeah, it's a really nice thing.
If there's anything that terrifies me the most, it's the ocean.
Do tell. Why is that?
I don't mind swimming on the ocean and like doing some diving on the shallows and stuff, but it's like the deep ocean. I can't go deep sea diving or going far out to sea because just the thought of something so massive being beneath me just terrifies me.
So it's not necessarily the creatures that you're afraid of, but the deep.
Yes, how massive it is down there, just how humongous the ocean is, and not knowing what's beneath.
You heard it here, You heard it here first, folks. We're preying on primal fears. We've got a ton of different factions here. We're going to go into a lot more detail on these things in later podcasts. If you have questions about them specifically, we can tell you. But I want to talk a little bit about the connection between our two worlds, the world of Castaways and Earth.
Earth.
So, Earth, millions of years ago, didn't have any water on it.
Oof. Bone
Neptune, the world of Castaways, millions of years ago, didn't have water on it. When water was introduced on the world of Castaways, Atlantis, water was also introduced here.
That is the origin of the water of the earth.
Yep. Regardless of what anything else tells you. That is where water came from, was intestines.
According to Castaways, at least.
No, this is true.
Oh.
This is a true story.
Oh.
How dare you even
All
joke
fact,
about it?
no fiction.
All fact.
This is a non-fiction book.
So, this world, the world of Castaways, is completely irrevocably connected to ours. If the world of Castaways gets completely covered in water, our world's going to drown.
Mm.
We're all dead.
So that means there's some land that's still uncovered.
There is. So deep in the deep valleys of the ocean on the world of Castaways, we find the ruins of Atlantis covering the whole world.
Oof.
But we also find on the highest peaks, which are barely islands above the surface, we find 5 separate things. Why 5? I don't know. It's just a number. Come on, guys.
I don't see the significance.
Well, there's 5 major land masses. Yeah, right. On Earth, there's 5 major land masses. These 5 islands represent the 5 major land masses on Earth. Not necessarily the countries. Not necessarily anything political here. It's just fun, okay?
So basically, the connection between the worlds is that in the Castaway world, it's kind of a smaller scale with more water than what ours is. Each island represents a continent, not the culture, just the land. Meaning that these islands can develop cultures of their own.
They're not tied to how we are in the US of A, or how people are in Russia, or in South Africa, or Australia, or anywhere. They're not tied to that. They're their own people, they're their own cultures, and they have developed extremely differently. So, for instance, let's go over some of those islands, shall we?
Oh, we shall.
Island number 1. This island is an island full of people that are technologically advanced in a way that uses, like, mist of some sort. Like, you know those trains that go down, they go choo-choo-choo-choo-choo, and you know, like that little mist out there? Yeah. It's called mist punk.
Oh, yeah, mist punk.
Yeah.
But it's hot.
Oh, yeah. Hot mist pump.
Oh, wait. Steampunk.
Yeah, it's got a lot of steampunk technology. These people are extremely advanced. Ish. So I'm really playing on the just after the Industrial Revolution, the what ifs on this island. These people have jetpacks. They're anything that you can imagine steampunk-wise for technology, they've got it. Island number 2. The next island I like to call Trump Island. And it's not Trump Island. It's Utopia. Utopia, the perfect place that has a wall all around it.
A wall? How big is this wall?
200, 300 feet.
Whoa.
They want to keep everybody in.
Oh.
And they want to keep whatever's out there out. None of these islands really have any recollection that any of the others exist.
Oh, really? So they don't see each other?
No, they're not seeing each other anymore. They're not boyfriend-girlfriend.
They're disconnected.
Yep.
Oh, they broke up.
So Utopia has a lot of interesting things going on with it. They're very bullheaded. Some of them literally.
Oof.
Like, some of them are minotaurs.
Yeesh.
And they may or may not have a big old maze in it.
A labyrinth.
Wow. I like that name. Yeah, so they are all about we are where it's perfect. Anything that's not perfect goes away. And we know where to send it.
To the Minotaur.
As opposed to the Megatar.
Megatar.
Island number 3. The next island is a group of people that, I really would love to hang out with them.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
What makes them so interesting?
They worship the deep.
That thing?
Yeah,
The terrifying thing?
Yeah, they seem like cool people.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, they're quite twisted. They have a leader. We'll go into this leader a little more on a different episode of our podcast. His name's Judd.
Judd?
Judd. Good old name, Judd.
Judd.
Hello, my name's Judd. And he may or may not be the avatar of the deep.
Oh.
But, that's not important. I'm sure that has nothing to do with the story.
No, nothing at all.
They like to perform these odd rituals to become servants of the deep. And, just nice people. Island number 4. The next island's sort of interesting. It's a moving island.
Moving?
Yeah. So, if you have bags that you need to go somewhere, boxes...
Oh.
You can call it up. It's called Two Men and an Island.
2 men in an island. 2 men in a moving island.
They'll pack up the stuff on the island and take you where you need to go. No, it's a lion turtle.
It's a lion turtle.
Yeah. Otherwise known as the avatar of the land.
Mm.
It does count as land. That's why Antarctica still exists. I don't know if it's actually paired to Antarctica. But if it wasn't actually land, we would have one less major land mass.
Oof.
Yeah. So it's extremely important, and it houses an extremely important person, simply known as the Prophet.
Ooh, sounds important.
Yeah, but we can get into him later too.
Okay.
And then there's the last island. The last island is probably the most advanced of all.
Oh, man.
It has sandy beaches, like a bit of a jungle area, couple palm trees, volcano in the center.
Ah.
That's it.
Oh. Is it a mechanical volcano?
No. It's got melted rock, and sometimes it spews forth.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Seems pretty primitive.
No, it's advanced.
Oh, okay. Advanced.
There's nobody that lives on it.
Oh. It's just advanced age?
Yeah, it's old. As old as the rest of the planet.
Oh, okay.
So, it is simply just an old, abandoned island, deserted. You don't want to be stuck on it. I'm sure it has nothing to do with the story.
Otherwise, you'd be a castaway.
Yeah, otherwise you probably would be a castaway. There has to be some sort of way to get between these worlds. Because if not, what's the point? If we're starting in Earth and we can't get to the Castaways world, we don't have a story.
So there must be a door.
Ish. More like portals.
Portal.
Not Valve's portal.
Oh, okay.
Aperture science got me thinking in Castaways. Have you ever been draining your bathtub and you got to the drain and you like swirled your hand around in a clockwise or counterclockwise motion just around the drain to make a whirlpool?
Yes.
Me too. It's pretty fun. Have you ever seen like a single droplet of water fall down exactly in the center of that whirlpool?
Uh-huh.
You know where that water ended up?
In the drain?
No, it went to Neptune.
Neptune?
Yeah.
So you're saying that the exact middle of a whirlpool is the portal?
Any whirlpool ever created or ever is, the exact center of it is a portal to the Castaways world. I'm sure that's not important.
No, not at all. I'm sure. No.
Because there's no story.
So could you enter the portal by riding down the...
No, you could not. You cannot ride down. You'd have to fall down into it.
So directly in the center. You can't be sucked in. You just have to fall straight.
You have to fall straight through.
Oh.
You know how that could happen?
How?
Maybe if you fell off of a crashing boat or something.
Ooh.
I don't know. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, that'd be terrifying.
So, you know, there are these people on the Castaways world called Castaways. Surprise.
What a twist.
I know, it's so crazy. These Castaways are people that are defenders of the land. They want to protect the land from being covered. They've all got specific powers and things. I'm sure we'll get into that. Maybe if you have questions on some of the powers, we could tell you about them. Write us questions. We will answer.
Do it.
Do it now.
Do it.
Do it. Bop it.
Do it.
Do it.
I am the Senate. I am the Senate.
So all these castaways have different powers. Each of them have something to do with protection. Protection of the land, protection of people. They may or may not be holding back the deep. Most of them may or may not be dead.
Ooh.
You know...
Are these the people that live on the islands?
These are some of the people that live on the islands.
So they're a select few.
They are an extreme select few. In order to become a castaway, in order what qualifies you to be a castaway, is that you came from Earth to Neptune, or to the world of castaways, to Atlantis.
Ooh.
I'm sure none of our main characters would ever have something to do with that.
Oh, I'm sure not. Yeah.
Yeah. So
no plot points here.
No. Why would we ever talk about plot? It's not like this is a podcast about stories. So there you have it. These castaways, they have been known by many names. Island hoppers, madmen, flood tamers. One of the most famous castaways of all time. I mean, you may or may not know the name Odysseus. I mean, those weird things did not happen on Earth.
That's true.
I know of nowhere with that many opium flowers.
Or large cyclopses.
Or sirens.
Yeah.
Ooh, sirens in this world are creepy.
Yeah. Yeah, you'll learn about them.
I love them. They are so gross. But that is the gist of things. That is the extremely dumbed down lore of this world.
Mm-hmm.
So, now we head to your questions.
This is a section where you guys can ask your questions directly to Zach. And I can answer some for you, but Zach is the main writer. He is the writer of this story. I just sit here and try to make him sound good. But
it doesn't work. I sound horrible.
So, as the more that we get questions on this podcast, the more development we can do with these stories, the more things that we can work through to make these podcasts even better for you.
I mean, honestly, right now, what we're doing is we're like, okay, maybe what would somebody like to hear about? And we'll tell you about it. But we don't know. We're not you. Last time I checked.
I don't think I'm you.
Yeah, we're not you. But you have questions. You may like these worlds and want to know more.
And you may want to interact with us and speak directly to us and have answers to your questions.
So write them in.
It'll make things tons better.
And we have an email that you can send them to. And that will be in the show notes for this episode. So please just look at that, submit them to us, and we'll start doing those questions. For example question from our listener, Jameson Schmiech.
Jameson Schmiech.
Would you like to read Jameson's later?
So I was wondering, you said the islands don't know each other exists. Has anybody been to multiple islands?
That's a great question, Jameson. There is a singular person that has been around for quite a long time that does go through the different islands, to the different islands. He is a very secretive person, so he doesn't tell everybody else about those islands. But that is the prophet. He's the one that goes on the moving island everywhere, and goes around and checks up on people, not necessarily as a benevolent person.
So you're saying he's not good?
He's not bad, but he sure as heck ain't ugly. His entity, his deity that he worships, the air, is a very chaotic thing. So he presents himself as a good person, presents himself as like, hey, my name's Gandalf. Almost. He's like, I brought you fireworks.
But secretively.
Secretively, he's in it for chaos. He's in it to cause confusion, to not answer as many questions as he makes, and in it for a reason that the air and him only know. That you could know if you asked questions.
Well, thank you for your question there, Jean-Michel Schmiech.
Yeah, it was a pleasure to have you write in to us and ask a question that we definitely read.
Yep. All right. So enough questions for today. So now I'd like to move on to my favorite portion of the podcast, a part where we get to give you a piece of our writing in a more dramatic and audio way. This is the prologue of Castaways.
"Hurry, Jim! Hurry!" The voice was deep, gravelly, and full of urgency. The sound of it pierced the deluge of rain that soaked the already drenched boat. The sudden sound broke the young, dirty-haired boy from his gaping at the monstrosity coming towards him at recklessly high speeds. Jim looked at his father briefly, but couldn't find the willpower to look away from the horse-shaped thing coming at him. If only he had a few more seconds he could see. Jim didn't like what he saw. It seemed to be made from the water at the bottom of the ocean. Dark, cold, lifeless, yet so full of hatred it seemed to possess every inch of its body. James Cruz tried to run away, but he felt like he was wading through waist-deep sludge. His father was still calling. "Come on, I have to move," thought Jim. He looked back over his shoulder, and the beast was still there, ever constant like the rolling of the tide, and with each pulse of its hooves the call came, slowly and unbidden into Jim's mind. "Come along. Come and drown." The voice was deep, yet not harsh. It had a certain lilt to it that he couldn't quite... "Jim, run!" His father broke his concentration by putting his rough, calloused hands on Jim's shoulder and pulling. Jim's father, Robin, was immensely strong due to life at sea as a fisherman, and his grip pulled Jim out of whatever was holding him. "What is that thing?" Jim screamed, the terror of the moment finally getting to him. His father was still pulling him along past the railings, running towards the cabin of the ship. "I can't tell you," came the reply. Jim knew the touch of his father and the sound of his voice like he knew the scent of the crisp sea air. Oddly, both the scent and the sound seemed very off at the moment. Jim ran. He would follow his father anywhere, and trusted him with his whole heart. His father was the only possession he had left. Jim and his father ran around and around the schooner from the monstrous equestrian water fiend in an endless murderous game of Ring Around the Rosies. "Why now?" thought Jim. "I finally convince him to take me out on the sea for the first time since Mother, and this happens. Why now?" "Where do we go?" Jim cried hopelessly. The reply came again, and Jim realized why the voice sounded off. His father was sobbing. I don't know, Jim. I don't know. Just don't let it catch you." As if to concur with Jim's father's statement, the horse whinnied, the sound of it like crashing waves crushing against Jim's eardrums and simultaneously against his will to run, as if he were a puppet to the will of the master. Jim's 8-year-old legs seized, all muscles tightened at once, and he fell helplessly and hopelessly to the ground. His father's grip slipped on his arm, and his father sprawled out in front of him like a seal on the beach. He quickly took a layout of his position and found he was exactly halfway between his father and the horse. But he knew what would catch him first. His father, just like that seal, would be useless at moving fast enough. The horse began to shift, an odd undulating motion. Its body became a tendril of water that somehow retained viscosity. The tendril shot at a speed twice of what the horse was running and encased Jim. The water was pervasive. It longed to kill, to drown. That was its only desire. Water began shoving its way into his nostrils. He opened his mouth to scream, but that sound was cut off by water forcing its way into another open crevice. His ears began popping at the immense pressure, and then came the worst pain he had ever felt. Most people don't think of the eyes as a crevice, but the water wasn't a person. The water pushed and pushed against his eyelids with an unimaginable force. Time seemed to slow as he heard that voice again, this time very soft, yet exceptionally menacing. "Drown!" What seemed before as roaring water now sounded like light rainfall as the reality of death sunk in and Jim's vision darkened. A powerful roar of sheer strength, explosive energy, terrific terror, and fatherly rage broke the pain of Jim's death as Jim's one possession somehow pulled the water beast off of his son. Robin grappled with the beast as watery tendrils began to pull out of Jim and push into his father. With one final bellow of defiance, Jim's father tossed the beast over the side of the boat. The terror was over. Neither of them noticed the 2 tendrils of water still attached to Robin's nose. Robin began to walk towards Jim, a tentative smile forming on his face when his head snapped back, his body went limp, and the water drug him overboard. The sea, seemingly appeased by its sacrifice, finally calmed its tumults. "No!" Jim screamed, his throat raw. "Dad!" His voice broke. By sheer adrenaline, Jim sprung to his feet and from sheer terror was unable to control himself as he walked to the edge of the ship. Through unbelieving eyes, he looked overboard to the waters below and saw nothing. No movement. The water lapped at the edge of the ship like its hunger had been satiated. There was no struggle, no hint that the only man Jim had left had ever existed. A cold, dark emptiness began to fill Jim's heart where a father, his father, once had been. Then, knowing he had nothing left, James Cruz, son of Robin Cruz, gave his very last possession, his tears. The events afterwards were a blur of unfortunate events for Jim. None of the crew saw what had happened, none of the crew saw the horse, and most laughed at him for his childish reasoning at his father's suicide. Jim didn't bother arguing, he knew it would do no good. To those men, Robin Cruz was the not convicted murderer of his wife, and the guilt finally got to him. Jim just obediently followed those men as they took him to his family's house to gather his things, and then to the orphanage. Jim didn't have any possessions, not anymore. But what he did grab were a picture of his father and mother, smiling, happy, in love, and a book of old stories. He didn't bother to say anything to anyone, didn't even bother to look at his new surroundings. It seemed the darkness outside matched the darkness inside, so he just flopped down on his new bed and let water overtake him again. As always, we'd like to thank our wonderful supporters for this podcast. My dear wife, Anna Brown, she's just fantastic.
And my dear wife, Joanna Lusk-Smith. She is so amazing as she is beautiful, and I couldn't do any of this without her. She supports me in more ways than I can count. And thank you, listeners, all of you who have downloaded it so far, and those who are coming to listen and to download even more.
Talking to you, person listening to this in 2025.
Enjoy. Download, share it, like it, ask questions, write in, be a part of this. Help us make these great. Thank you so much.
Ta-ta!
Bye-bye now.
Yo, 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 my name is Zach.